Hi everyone, this is Jim Delepine. I'm going to go through the process of recreating this book cover design that I worked on and show you an assortment of techniques that will help you with your book cover design. So I'm going to be discussing the content aware feature, layer masks, custom brushes, blend bows, and the liquify filter, and probably other things also as we go along. So this is going to be a bit of a process here, so bear with me. But I guarantee you that you'll learn something new, and this will refresh your memory with regards to Photoshop. All right, so I'm going to start out with working with these following images here. This ball player here, and I got all these images from Google. This crowd scene, these flames, and this here. So with regards to recreating your cover, you need to really look for your assets and really see what can work together. So you're most likely going to need to, I would say, get 3 or 4 times as many images as possible. Make sure they're good quality. Make sure that when you bring them into an 8 by 10 by 300 pixel per inch file, that you do not have to scale them up more than 25%. Okay, the whole purpose is to retain quality and keeping in mind that when you print an image, it needs to be 300 pixels per inch, all right, to get good quality. So you want to show that you know what you're doing, and hopefully this will be a portfolio piece for you. All right, so let's talk about a starting point here. So I basically already have this set up here where I have an 8 by 10 by 300 pixels per inch document here. I'm working with RGB. I like to work with RGB until the end, and then I convert everything over to CMYK. The reason is that you are viewing this on your monitor, which is RGB, and also you have access to more filters, and for me it just works better. Okay, so I've got a black background here. I brought this image in here and placed this in position, and I've got this ball on a soccer ball on fire here, and I've got these flames here, and I've already got my player brought in and cut out that I copy and pasted from this document here by simply going to the magic wand tool. I increase my tolerance to 40 to try to eliminate having too much of a black outline, and I simply clicked on the background layer, inversed my selection, Shift F7, and copy and pasted it into my document. So what I'll do is simply close out of all these files here that I don't need now, and we can begin. All right, so starting with this layer here, okay, what I want to do is fill the entire background with this color. So this is going to be my base. All right, so I'm going to go to my rectangular marquee tool, put a selection around the area I want to edit. And this feature in Photoshop is really quite amazing. This calculates and averages out the surrounding pixels and figures out what goes into that selected area. So Photoshop is now looking down at this area here, and it will calculate what needs to be filled into that area. It's a hit or a miss, but most of the time it's really accurate, and just know that you need to just put a selection around the area that you want to edit. You don't want to extend anywhere beyond that. So if I hit Shift F5, by default the content aware feature comes up for the fill, and I'll hit OK, and we'll see what happens. All right, takes a little bit of processing, and as you can see, it kind of did a funky little thing over here with the hand. So I'm going to, let's see, let me undo that and see if I can just, let me hide my layer palette, F7, and let me just hold down my Alt key and surround the area I want to subtract. So the Alt key will subtract from a selection. Okay, and now I will try it again. And Shift F5 and enter. And let's see what happens. We still have a little bit of an issue here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to click away to deselect, and I'm going to surround this area. This time I'll use the lasso tool. I'll click and drag around here and hit Shift F5, and there we go. That's good. That's fine. I really just wanted a base underlying layer. And now what we'll do is, let me bring up my layers palette again, F7. I like to work with shortcuts, so I'll be talking about shortcuts, and I highly recommend that you do that. Do not waste time going up to the drop down menus here and going to edit, transform, look at the shortcut. All right. Okay. Again, Shift Control T. All right. So, or Control T for free transform. All right. So look at the shortcut, click away, and then use that shortcut to scale or rotate, whatever you want to do. All right, so I've got this image here that I'll keep hidden for now, and let's work with the ball player. All right, so this will require custom brushes. So what I did was I went to brusheasy.com and downloaded some free brushes. That seems to be a pretty trustworthy site. I've never had any issues. And what I did was I downloaded custom brushes. And what you're going to do is you would load those brushes by going to, as long as your paintbrush is selected, you click on the brush icon right here. And in the drop down menu here, whoops, I'm sorry, for the brush presets, you're going to click here and select load brushes. And what I downloaded here were the explosion brushes. All right, there's probably better brushes for this, but this is the one I chose. So I'm going to load those brushes, and what they do is they load at the bottom of your panel here. So you'll see them, they won't be named or anything, but they're usually very large in size. All right, and so I'll select one of these brushes here, and as soon as you drag your cursor over, remembering that your paintbrush is selected, you'll see the cursor change. Okay, so what we're going to do is this. The first thing we're going to do is duplicate the player layer. So I'm going to hit Control J. Control J duplicates a layer as long as there's not a selection. If there was a selection within that layer, it would duplicate or copy what's in that selection and bring it to the layer above. All right, so I have a duplicate layer here. I'm going to work on the top layer, and I'm going to rename this subject. And I'm going to name the underlying layer effect. All right, so with the subject layer active and the underlying layer hidden, I'll zoom in. I'm hitting spacebar control, and I'm going to create a layer mask for this layer here. So I'm going to click on the layer mask icon, and that layer mask is filled with white, and I'm making sure that black is my foreground color. And I'm going to, you're going to need to select, and of course this is all dependent on your image here. I'm going to select any one of these brushes and decrease my brush size by hitting my left bracket key. And I'll zoom in, and then using my space bar to maneuver around my document here. I'm just trying to be efficient here. Let me hide my layers to take advantage of my screen real estate. And the idea is this. I want to start to hide portions of this player on the edges, okay? So this is probably not the best image to use, but you'll get the basic concept of what I'm talking about. So again, making sure that my layer mask is active. Black is my foreground color. My opacity is at 100%. I'm in the normal mode. And I'm going to start to click and hide portions of our player. Now also, I think what will be best is if I hide this background layer so we can see what's happening better. So now I'll experiment with several brushes, and this is what you want to do. You want to go to different brushes, and you want to increase and decrease your brush size from time to time. You want variation. You don't want a repeated look. All right, so I'm clicking, and I'm basically kind of trying to eat away one side of this player. And I'll go to the next brush here. What I want to do is this. I want to eliminate the defining edge of one part of the player. All right, to give it a look of disintegration or explosion. And you'll just need to bear with me now, because you'll see an end result that you'll say, ah, that makes sense now. So I'm going to just continue to do this And I'll be experimenting with different brushes just for variation and eliminating some of these pixels here on the layer mask. So keep in mind now, this is the advantage of using layer mask. They are non-destructive. So at any time I can go back, and if I right click here and disable it, you'll see the original image. All right, you can also edit this. If you don't like an area, you can go back, and with white, you can bring part of that image back in. All right, so I'm going to continue to do this and jump ahead so you don't simply watch me do this. Okay, so this is what I've come up with. I'll now resume. So I will now show my underlying layer, hide the top layer. So here's what I'm going to do now. With the top layer hidden and the underlying effect layer visible, I'm going to put a selection around my player here. And here's why. I'm going to put a selection that looks something like this. Let me hit Control 0 to fit in the window. And I'm going to work with the liquify filter. And if I had no selection around here, the liquify filter would take into consideration the entire document. And I only want to work with this area here. So it's to your benefit to put a selection around the area that you want to work with. And I'm extending down a little bit because I want to pull these pixels down. So I'll go to Filter Liquify. And you should be able to see that just fine. And now what I'll do is I'll start to, let me zoom in, spacebar control, and I'm going to start to work with my paintbrush size. I shouldn't say paintbrush, but my liquify, I forget what they call this, the forward warp tool. All right, what I'm going to do is start to pull down. And by the way, the right bracket key also works for this. So I really want to distort this. I want to pull these pixels down and really make this kind of ugly looking and really make him look pretty creepy actually. And let me pull this out, and you'll see the reasoning for this later on. Okay, you don't have to be careful with this. I'm just kind of like really distorting this and pulling all these pixels away. And this is probably not the best image to use, but there's much better images that will give you better results, but this is what I'm working with. All right, so let's just stick with that, and let's hit OK. All right, so this is what we have. Now, what we're going to do is this. We're going to create a layer mask for this layer. Okay. Now, since I had a selection, it gave it a layer mask based on that selection. So what we're going to do is hit Alt-Delete to fill that layer mask with black. So as long as black is my foreground color, Alt-Delete is the shortcut for filling what is active. So if I show the top layer, I see what's there. Now, with the bottom layer or the effect layer mask active, I'm going to make white my foreground color. I'll now go to my paintbrush tool, zoom in, and now I will start to click and drag and pull in or make visible the underlying layer, the layer that we liquefied. Okay, so you can see what's going on here. And again, you want variation with brush sizes and kinds of brushes. Now, the additional beauty of this is this. You can change your mind. You can go back in. Since these are layer masks, you can go back in and edit this. So I actually could have pulled my pixels out even more. Okay, so what I can do is if I change my mind, I can go to black now and kind of put those pixels back in. So it's a back and forth kind of thing. All right, so you could always change your mind or decide on that later on. All right, I went a little bit too far because I have a defined line here. So let me just get rid of that. Again, I'm using the layer mask. All right, so I'll just leave that as is, and it definitely is not the best, but let's see what happens. But we can change our mind, as I said. All right, so let me show the underlying layer and talk about other images here, and we'll work with this fire image now. So I will hit Control T and scale this up a little bit. I've got a little bit of a watermark in the corner here. Yep, so I'm going to select that and hit Shift F5, and that will get rid of the content aware feature will take care of that. So now I'm going to, let's see, I'll drag this up to the top. Let me rotate this or flip this. So let me just scale this up a little bit more so it hits the edge. I'm going to go to, with the fire layer active, I'll go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. All right, so with that layer active, I actually will want to fill the top area here. So with the fire layer active, Shift F5, which would have taken care of that watermark anyway. All right, so we've got that filled in there. Now what I'll do is I'll create a layer mask for this layer. I'll go to my paintbrush tool and select a soft edge brush, 0% hardness. I'll get a very large size brush. And what I will do is I will paint on the layer mask to kind of get rid of that defining line here. I'm going to take the subject layer, all right, these two layers here, I'm going to link them together so that this way when I move one, the other will move with it. Since it's linked, I'll hit Control T on the subject layer. So I want to rotate this character here. So Control T puts a bounding box around it. Since they're linked, I'll be able to rotate this. So what I want to do is rotate it from this base point here. So I'm going to go to the center point here, click and drag my center point down here so that when I rotate it, it will rotate around that center point. Okay, so I can rotate and I can also scale at the same time. So when I scale, I don't want to distort it, so I'm going to hold down the Shift key to constrain it as I pull up to scale. All right, I'll let go of my cursor first, and then the Shift, and then hit Enter to apply that transformation. And now I will work with, let's see, I'll work with this image here, the fire. So let me bring this to the top layer. All right, and I'm going to position this so that this ball has this effect around it. So I'm going to lower the opacity of the layer so I can see through it. Position it up here. All right, I'm kind of centrally locating it around that ball. So I will hit Control T, and again I'll take that center point, bring it right to the center of the ball. So now it will rotate around that ball. Okay, and I'll also scale it. So I want this soccer ball on this image to kind of match the size of that basketball. So if I go to any corner and click and drag inward and then hold down Shift and Alt, it will scale into that center point. All right, little tip there. All right, so I'm letting go with my Shift, my cursor, and then the Shift and Alt, and then zooming in at the same time. I haven't applied my transformation yet, so I'm kind of like roughly just registering that place. All right, I'm happy with that. I'll hit Enter to apply the transformation. So I'll bring this back up to 100% opacity. What I want to do is get rid of this black edge here. So one suggestion that I have would be to experiment with your blending modes. So for this layer, I found that linear dodge is a good option. So we have linear dodge up. Also going to now apply a layer mask to that. Go to my paintbrush tool, make sure my hardness is very soft edged, maybe 10%. Reduce my brush size, left bracket key, zoom in and click to start to eat away to reveal the underlying basketball. I still have a lot of pattern in there that I may want to get rid of. So what I can do is click on the layer mask for the subject layer And what you would do is with white as your foreground color on that subject layer mask, I'm now clicking and hiding that portion of that stippling disintegration technique to make the basketball a little more visible. And that looks pretty good. What I also may want to do while I'm in here is select the image part of this layer, and I may want to brighten up the color for this. So if you go to the sponge tool and select saturate, all right, and then click and drag on that, you'll brighten up or increase the saturation of the orange of that ball. All right, that looks pretty good. So now with the layer mask active for this layer, I'll go to my paintbrush, make sure black is my foreground color. You have a 0% hardness brush. I now want to eliminate these lines around here, so I'll paint on those lines with the appropriate size brush to kind of like just soften up these edges here, and that looks fine. All right, so that looks pretty cool. Let's see here. Yeah, that looks cool. All right, so I like that. Okay, so Control 0, here's what we have so far. Now, the next step is you want to create some text here. So I am going to show you a technique on how to create this look here. All right, so it's kind of interesting. So what I'll do is I'll go to my vertical text tool or vertical type tool. I'll click and create the word slam in all uppercase. And since I didn't set this up beforehand, it's coming in as black. Doesn't matter, but let's just highlight that and make it white so we can see what we have here. So I already selected a college bold font that I thought would be kind of appropriate for this. I didn't have this font, so what I did was I went to dafont.com and downloaded a font that was more appropriate. So what I'll do is I'll hit Control T and scale this up and position this where I'd like it, and we'll leave it. I like the fact that when there's interaction in between imagery and text, so keep that in mind. That's a real interesting approach to unify your design. All right, so what I'm going to do is use this selection from this text to work with. So I'll control click on the thumbnail for the text layer and hide the text. Okay, so I'm going to click and control click to select the background, the group scene, and the fire layer. Okay, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy from all those layers at once, and what you would do is hit Control Shift C. Control Shift key will copy all of these layers together, what's in this selection, and then I will hit Control V to paste. So if I hold down my Alt key and click on the visibility icon, it shows you that one layer, and you can see that it pulled everything from all layers. Why do that? Because now you can apply a layer style to this and create some interesting looks. So if I double click on that new text layer, and keep in mind that you cannot move it now. All right, here's what it, whoops. Here's what you've got on that layer here. Okay, so you cannot move that. So you're going to double click on this layer to access the layer styles dialog box. Let me just grab this to the side here so you can see the results. Select bevel and emboss, and I will click on the name to access the settings for that. Outer bevel. I'll leave that as is for now. I'll select a stroke and click on the stroke name, and the default color for stroke is black, so let's change that. So I'll click on the color box here, and once you have the color picker up, if you drag your cursor away, you can sample a color. Okay, so I'll sample this yellow. So there we go, we have that yellow up, and now we can also let's see, increase the size if you want, decrease the size, and then we can also work with some other techniques. I encourage you to experiment. So let's see what color overlay does. So if I select that, select the name, the default is gray, so we certainly don't want gray. So I'll select maybe a yellow. I'll hit OK, and then you can change the blend mode to multiply to react to the underlying layers. All right, so that would be kind of interesting. Or you could experiment with other. I mean, definitely experiment as much as possible. This is how you learn, but make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you remember what you're doing, rather. Okay, so we'll just stick with multiply for now. It really did not make too much of a visual difference at all, but let's just go with that, okay? I want to make sure that there's some kind of an interaction here. So if I go to my move tool and make sure that auto select and layer is selected, wherever I click, it will select that layer. So since the subject layer is active and linked, I can now hit Control T. I'll rotate this. I'll bring this rotation center point down here. I'll rotate this so it's overlapping the text. I may want to scale this up a little bit for more oomph. Now watch what happens. See what happened here? I forgot to link something here so let me go back here and select this here and link all three together. So now when it's scaled up, they all stay together. All right, so I'll go here. All right, let me just leave that as is. All right, so now what we have is, what we want to do is place this hand as if it's going over the M here. All right, so you may think, okay, well, let's just go to this layer here. I'll create a layer mask. I'll zoom in, go to my paintbrush, make sure black is my foreground color, make sure I'm at 100% hardness, and with a reasonable sized brush, I'll click and that happens. Okay, so you don't want that. What I want to do is try to hide that portion of the M as if the hand was overlapping the M. So let me undo that, Control Alt Z Z Z, and then go, went back too far. And now what you'll do is right click and convert this to a smart object. All right, and then with the layer mask active, when you click, you won't have that issue. All right, little tip there. So I'll zoom in, get a small paintbrush, and just hide those areas to give the illusion that the hand is going on top of the M, and all is good. All right, so you may want to do the same thing up here. Now the one thing I want to add would be additional breaking up of the texture, or adding additional texture down here by his legs. So if we select our paintbrush tool and make sure that the layer mask for this layer here is active, we can adjust our size and start experimenting with white as our foreground color. We could just click here, and I like to go back and forth with the size of the brush just to get variation, and we can continue to add to the effect. And we're of course now revealing that textural element underneath. All right, okay. All right, I'll stop there. All right, guys, I talked a long time, so I hope that you got some value from this. All right, take care now. Bye.